So about music, like as I said, the second part was a bit lost for me. So I really want to have that time and space for to see it again and think about it. But like
Yeah,
the
away
way,
from film
yeah.
festivals.
But the way you described the about the humanity, I wanted to compare it. But the comparison with Kelly Reichardt was really beautiful. I didn't think about it that way, but when you told it, like it was like, oh yeah. And about Pasolini, I thought more about Straub Huillet than Pasolini.
Mm.
But yeah, that's also, I think, accurate. What I was saying, the way the portrayal of humanity, I think I found that in Basteiros S here in Encounters, because his cinema is, maybe it's so hard to describe, but it's about small
Mm.
touches, small encounters, and like chance encounters between human beings, and the way they like connect with each other around a bowl of soup. It's so simple, and I can't find words to explain what movie is about. It's so simple. And
It's so down to earth in a very non-cinematic but also very subliminal way. Maybe it's like I really love the term photogenia, and I don't know if that exists in English.
mhm.
But yeah, photogenia, this capacity to capture light. I think Basde was exploring that in his previous films, but he was so nocturnal. I think it was already visible in Ghost Tropic, and especially in the last part of Ghost Tropic, when the woman, the protagonist, comes home,
Mhm.
and then the camera stays in her living room for a while the sun comes up. That was really beautiful, and I think these two movies speak to each other a lot, especially in the way that he's able to create these, luminous spaces, and these, kind of daily but also like starting to become night, and this kind of, very cinematic lighting. And I think that's the thing that turns these special little moments that are portrayed in the film, obviously, into something that's really undescribable. Because
Mm.
I think it's very, difficult to encapsulate in one description the way he works, and he is so precise towards, the scale of light and darkness, and also the scale of narrative he uses, because he's very narrative in this one. He's more
Yeah.
narrative than I ever like recall him being. And being so precise and so subtle, it's really difficult, at least for me. And I'm sorry, Yuki, because I think I have cut you.
No,
It's
no,
like
no, no.
you don't have to, bring me here to talk about movies I love, because I get
No.
very passionate.
No, no, I'm really passionate about Basteiros, because about the lighting, I thought about more of the off hours in our lives, because it's
Mm.
also about something maybe socially meaningful, because in Ghost Tropic 2, the lady we see who fell asleep in the metro and couldn't find
Mhm.
this, like missed her stop, I felt like there's a social part of it. And in this film too, like off hours for the people who wake up early, who have to wake up early, go to work. And I think it's also about small people we just don't see in
Yeah.
mainstream cinema. And I think that off hours, like in the middle of the night, or like more in the morning, and these hours are also representative of those humans in their lives. And I think the thing I liked the most was that part of like giving space to that. It's like a Edward Hopper painting, like not Nighthawks, but it's not desperate like that, or not distant. And cold,
Yeah.
but really embracing. And I think it started really with construction, the buildings. I expected something more urban, but then really gradually, really smoothly, we move into the nature. And I really love that smooth. It's so smooth that you don't realize it happened. So just the portrayal of the character to move into this world was also interesting, I think.
Absolutely. The young man and a young woman that live their lives separately, but then they eventually meet each other, and you start to like expect a love, plot, traditional, love, a dramatic arc or something. But you actually like realize that at one point of the movie, when they've become friends and they are actually like approaching the love stage, the love stage, please. And she gets angry about nothing, and she gets upset about nothing, and it's like, I have reality here. So you understand how people move. And even though, I don't know, I find myself sometimes when I go out with friends and friends that I really like a lot, but they do something that upsets me a little bit or something, and I just, for 1 minute, I'm not the same person that I used to be. And I think you have to have a very close understanding of what is like to be a social being in this world. And I think Bezos has that. Besides class and besides nature and besides all, I think he's very good at looking at things.
And also about the curiosity, maybe, with the human being, like not only to human beings, because we see two people discovering each other, like, because at one point he's just like passing through the forest, and like then it's like it evokes his curiosity, and he starts to like check things out with her in the middle of the forest. And I think it's also about the connection with people, and the way it's not only about soup, but the way it stands in the middle of the relations in the whole movie with the like a mechanic with his friend. And I love that, I don't want to say archaic, but like it's like a exchange item, you know what I mean? And
yeah,
it was so interesting to see that, like, it's not about like giving things to people, like you give something and you get something, but it's just like, it's a simple way of portraying human relations. Yeah, I can say that. Like, it's so minimal with just like a soup, but it's how it goes actually.
Yeah, and the soup actually like looked really good. I'm sorry, that's just a little spoiler. He has to like give away some soup to go on vacation.
Yeah.
Sorry for the spoiler.
And
but actually it really looked really nice. I
and
mean, really delicious.
and about the another formal thing, I think he really has a interesting sound environment, because I don't know if you realize, but exterior sound is not really present. So we only hear the world with, as if they're the only people in that frame, as if there aren't any other people in the environment or in the whole world. So we feel that they maybe feel their loneliness or their relation in a more profound and like present way, because there's no outside sound. I don't know if you...
No, absolutely. And I think it's a really interesting idea to, link it with another movie I think you wanted to talk about.
Yes.
This being present, this being here, this, kind of voluntarily giving up things to, stay focused. And I think this actually speaks really well to what another movie wants to do. This other movie is called Samsara. And
it's also one of the hyped movies in the festival, we can say, no?
Can we say a hyped experience, because people are
Yes.
praising it for the experience, the cinematic experience. Luis Patiño is a Galician director, and he directed another very poetic movie, a short film about, I don't remember the name.
Sower of the Stars? No?
Yes, there you go.
Okay.
There you go. Thank you. And here he draws portrait of one Buddhist community, a monk, children monk community in Nepal, I think, or Mongolia.
It's Laos, I think.
Laos. okay, sorry. uh, and then he transforms it through a very special experience that I don't know if you want to describe, to another thing, in
Mhm.
this case a human landscape of women collecting algae. And I think that movie really wanted us to, plunge into the images and, relax our narrative willingness. And but I don't know if you think it accomplished that. What do you think about it?
The invitation to the participate in the movie experience is interesting, because do you want me to like spoil it for everyone?
I don't think there's any spoilers you can
Okay,
actually
so
make. I mean,
since it's about a Buddhist practice that our souls migrate into another bodies to continue their afterlife, it's about like what they call it, being coming to world in another being, let's say. And
meta coming to world in
yeah.
another being.
So in the first part of the film, there's a young boy who reads a book to that old woman to accompany her in her journey to death and to rebirth. And in the middle of the film, actually, we kind of have that experience. We accompany her in that experience with closing our eyes, because the movie invites us to close our eyes and just like go with the flow. And
literally.
yeah, yes, so it's I think it's interesting. I wrote this on Twitter, how the way a director also accompanies us with the narration, and I think it reflects with the film's gesture to introduce a participatory part. But yeah, I think I found it interesting, but I also like wanted to ask him when I talked to him about the third world from a white male point of view, like, because I wanted to ask him if he acknowledged this side of things, and because they're there, and I think he knows that it's inevitable to have that exotic imagery, because it's like there. What I found interesting in that part is that he leaves us completely. Like in a cinema, you can also open your eyes, and I love that different way of experiencing that part, because I open my eyes, for example, like to just look at what is happening.
Yeah, I really enjoyed, and I must use the word enjoyed, that middle section where there's this meta becoming another person thing going on. And I actually like enjoyed myself as I would if I were a child discovering what, cinema is. And I really appreciated it, because it made me feel like I was getting rid of a very, tired part of me that I carry around whenever I go to a film festival and whenever I
Oh
see a Luis
yes.
Patiño film. Because, you were talking about exoticism. He does that every time. And for example, in Costa da Morte or in Lua Vermelha, he does that with a very well,
Aestheticizing
this
way.
yeah, absolutely. And so I was like kind of, suspicious, but I let myself go and I enjoyed that part a lot. The rest of it, I thought it was kind of, apart from being exotic, that I know, or at least I suspect that he knows that. It was like really simple and really beautiful, but not in a very,
Profound way.
compelling way. Yeah, I would say compelling, because it didn't leave me with, I didn't leave the cinema wanting to watch it again. And I think that having this very intense middle section, and then, giving away your movie to a very simplistic narrative, or maybe not very, I would say he's conscious, he's being, taking a picture of a very, distorted, touristy picture of a more complex society when it comes to women picking up algae in Zimbabwe, or
Zanzibar,
oh
I
my
checked it,
goodness,
it's Zanzibar.
Zanzibar, yeah. And even though I know he acknowledges that, I think he just gives the rest of the movie up for the trick in the middle part. For me, I don't know, it was kind of, disappointing to see that he could do so much, but
Mm.
at the same time, he didn't like try to think of something that wasn't as naive and as
Yes,
manipulistic as the goat and the little girl.
I
It's
was
like,
I was just
stop.
using this word, like I wanted to use his approach was a bit naive in terms of transmutation and reincarnation, and like that third part was as if it was just imagined by a, I don't know, teenage or maybe a little kid. I love that simplicity, and but it's still like using an animal to talk about connection with the world. It's so anthropocentric, actually. It's like it's just
Hmm.
negates itself. I don't know how to explain this, but when I see an animal used in films that want to connect to nature, it actually does the opposite thing. It's just like shows that it's impossible to connect with the nature with a thing which is cinema. It's a really constructed and human thing, and I think Patino is also suffers from the same situation in the third
That's
part.
really interesting. I didn't read it that way, and now yeah, you're right. I mean, absolutely. It's
And
like, what else can you use if you're, anthropocentric? I mean, a
mm,
cute little animal. What's more
yeah,
domesticated and colonized than that?
and I think he, like, we have a lot of films about animals these last years about EO, and the goat here, it's like it's just about being cute, and I think it's the focus of being cute is I think it's just creates an alienation from the film. Like at the third part, everyone was like, oh, you know,
Yeah.
yeah, and
It's like cute goats are really 2013. Now it's 2023, Lois.
and I also asked him whether he screened the film to the people who worked, and he said he haven't yet, but he'll going to, because I think it's also important when you portray a community when they're involved in your film. I think it's also important to
Give back.
involve them in the final product because they deserve it. Actually, they're part of it. I wanted to know that, and I think it's important when you go to like, it's my principle. If I were a director and if I had gone to a place in some part of the world, I definitely would want to show my film to the people, and I think it's the final part of like giving something to them because you take
Yeah.
something from them at the beginning. And I also asked him about Apichat Pong because
Oh,
with all the people I talked about the movie, there was like, it's like Apichat Pong in a way. Like I think it's like a catchy thing about in the Wire article, but it's true. You immediately think about Memoria somehow, because in
ooh.
Memoria the character, the Hernan, it's also about living in a like a endless life. I think there were also comparisons about Memoria and
Yeah,
Samsara.
Memoria is really playful towards language. So yeah, I think the comparison is right. I didn't think about it when I saw the movie, but I do think about it now. Yes, absolutely. I mean, obviously one is really more, I would say, yes, subtle in its way of, sound and cinematic language, but yeah, I think it's a very good comparison. I would really love to read your interview, Oiku. Is it going to be published or has it
Uh,
already?
no. I don't know if I'm gonna like. I don't have any outlet yet because I'm full of
Ah,
interviews that I never published. Like my computer is full of them, so I don't know yet. But and I also, he told me that he doesn't care about like if somebody thinks it's like Apichatpong, it's okay, because even the name of the film Samsara, there's a film that is called Samsara, and it's really not far away from what he tries to do. So I think he's okay with
yeah.
like connections and those comparisons. I think he doesn't care, and it's okay. I think to have that like openness about your creative process. You know.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And I'm really glad that films like this exist because at least they outstand. Maybe they're problematic and maybe it's our job to, deconstruct them and to think through them. But at least it's not pure cliche. and pure, social, realistic film that's really abundant in film festivals. And I think that at least it provides us an excuse to rethink about what we find acceptable and what we find accurate towards, in regards to cinematic language. And even though it's very obvious that it's trying to do that, I find it really hard in a normal context, in a normal, generalistic outlet coverage, to find these spaces to think about cinematic language further than, just the subject of the movie or the character development or whether it's well written or not. And I'm actually really grateful for films like this one to be programmed in a film festival.
And what was like your favorites, apart from the ones we talked about, apart from the ones that get the prizes in the festival? Like, do you have any favorites from different sections, maybe from Forum?
Forum, yes. I actually I'm trying to program this one into La Alternativa, one of my film festivals. It's called El Rostro de la Medusa in Spanish, or The Face of the Jellyfish, and it's from
the ID film. I haven't watched it yet.
It's really good. So Nelisa Liebenthal, it's the director, and it's very low-key sci-fi movie about a woman that wakes up one morning and her face has changed. So wow, talking about a really good high concept. And the thing is, The Face of the Jellyfish is itself a movie that becomes obsessed with the face of everyone we see appearing in the movie. And it's very funny because it's not only, people. The movie intertwines fragments from fiction, regular common fiction, from her trying to like survive and trying to have a normal life with her new face, because obviously all her documents are now wrong, and all her family actually like looks to her like a monster, but in a very low-key deadpan way. I really love the humor in this movie because it's a comedy, and it's really good. It's really this kind of not very serious about being a comedy. But the other part of the movie, it's actually it's domestic footage, found footage about a zoo in Italy, I think. And the movie kind of like intertwines these kind of two realities together, the fiction and the documentary part. But for the documentary part, it films animals and then it like decomposes their faces into
oh my god,
structures.
I'm so hyped for this movie right now.
It's really good. And the thing is, it comes to a point when everything and everyone has a face, and a very strange and funny face. And I don't know, I just really love the sheer absurdity of categorizing like souls into dots and into facial diagrams. And it was like, I think it's very clever in a world where our identity and our face, and our, I would say, like the door to our souls. I know it's a very soft metaphor, but when it's being used to generate data, I think it's a very clever and on point reflection in regards to that. And I would really love you to watch this movie.
Yes, I'm gonna watch because I have it in festival scope, so I'm definitely gonna watch it. But I really love how forum section includes humor in its selection, because I think people have maybe a prejudice about forum as if it's just about experimental and like films not really accessible for the audience. But I think like, as it's also, I remember from last year, Tres Tigres Tristes, I really love
Tres Tigres, that was really good.
It was really good. So I really love seeing titles like that, like having humor and like discovering them in forum section. I think it was a bit like with About 30. I don't know if you watched that film.
No,
Lawrence liked it a lot, so it's also about a really simple not coming of age, but like a 20-something story about a man, and we go back and forth in his life, and all of them in really social context, like interacting with different people, with his sister, with his ex-boyfriend, but it's all about like really ordinary stuff. We feel like all the characters are not doing really meaningful things with their lives, but they as all people in their 20s. So, and I really love that film's way, in which human beings are just simple, not really complex, but also suffering from depression. And I think it's just like both has humor and also the subjects like death, because also there's also a part with his brother's death, and also COVID, and it just mingles everything in a really economic story. Yeah, I think it's the word, the economic about narration. I couldn't
Wow.
explain it in a good way, but I think it's not like a Sundance film, but it feels like a bit.
I think you've described it quite well, really. I'm really looking forward to it. Do you know if it's on Festival Scope?
Yes, I guess so. I think one of my favorites in the festival was also in Forum. It's Our Body. I wasn't expecting this to be this impressed by Our Body. I don't know if you watched it.
Yes, I did. Can I say the title in French, please?
Yes.
Notre corps.
Ouais,
I'm
notre
sorry.
corps.
Notre corps. I'm so sorry. Yes, I did. I did. I think you enjoyed it more than I did, but we talked about it when we were in Berlin, and I think you have a really, I would say, beautiful and really touching way to describe it. So I please beg you
Okay.
to please talk to me like you did
Okay.
that time.
So I feel like the recent films, we have a tendency to portray the fragility of the body, and I feel like even it's not directly about COVID. I feel like there's people are conscious about how easily we can lose our bodies or lose ourselves or relatives. I think there's a tendency to portray that fragility, and I think yes, and Our Body is also one of those films. But I think comparing to the Humanis Corporis Fabrica, it's like a other side of the coin, where we see a really cold, more technological structure and about the hospital environment. This is about just human connection. And I felt that the way the doctors interacted with the patients, I think it doesn't exist in real life, or maybe I wasn't in those kind of hospitals, but I think it's France, it's really hard to find that kind of attentive, caring doctors. And but I have to mention the film focuses on a woman-oriented hospital. It's like it's all about women.
Yeah, it's like, how do you say that? Specialized in, feminine.
Female organs or females organism. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we could get into problematic terminology here.
Yes, with
But yeah,
transgender
absolutely.
people.
Woo!
But the most touching part was that at the beginning of the film, Claire Simon, the director, tells that, I hope I won't get cancer. I don't know if she filmed that before the shooting started, but at one point we learned that she has a breast cancer. And it's like, I was completely shocked of her daring, because imagine putting yourself in front of camera at the moment when you learn that you have cancer. I think it's really bold, and also bold in terms of exposing yourself to that world, because from that point she's not an outsider. She's not just like a clinical camera like in Wiseman films and hospital. She becomes a part of that world. She becomes part of those anxieties, and I think it's really touching. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm starting to like it more. So please, I mean, we need to make another Skype call and just continue talking about this movie, because I have to finally convince myself that actually I have to rewatch it and see it outside the film festival
But
environment.
But it's not a perfect movie. Like we talked about the portrayals of doctors, but not all the not about the carriers. Maybe portrayal of transgender people. I think it has maybe not so strong points, but I still respect and love the overall project.
Thank you for this, Öykü. Really.
Yeah, I'm
really.
so happy that you gave your time for this really long talk about Berlinale, and I hope subscribe.
Yes.
I don't know what we say for podcast listeners. Is there a term for it?
Listeners, followers,
Okay. So
cult followers, because we have obviously created the cult here
yes,
towards good cinema.
I hope our listeners enjoyed it. And even though we maybe talked about the films they haven't watched and they know nothing about, I hope we explained them and introduced some good movies. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, and it was a real pleasure talking to you, Öykü.
Yeah.
It's always really enriching, getting your point of view. Really,
I feel the same. Yeah. Yeah. Oh.
Okay, we should do this more often.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Thank
Thank
you
you so much.
much.